It's very zen, Monja, to have the talk without the talker.
Yeah.
Monja
Well,
Isshin, live from Brazil. I am so honored to have you here at Tree Leaf, and as you can see, she is a very, very high and illustrious monk. That is why they give her that special hat she is wearing there. Uh,
yeah.
did you have you been to the World Cup yet?
I haven't been to it, but naturally I ended up following it. You know, it's impossible not to follow because we hear, you know, anytime there's a goal, then there's all these fireworks and stuff go off, and yells and screams and cheers and horns beeping and whatever. Yeah, okay. And
Is,
so,
is
okay,
that
we're
true during Zazen that we may hear the horns and the fireworks going off?
no, because it was yesterday. Okay, but at the same time, yes, we've all got to really uh, pray for our top player, Neymar. They got a fractured vertebrae out of the thing.
Oh, we will sit with
Yeah,
Meta for him today.
yeah.
Let,
Um,
let me briefly introduce you. Let me also say, William, who's on our waiting list. I think there's a spot if you want to jump in there. Just jump on in. Monja
okay.
Isshin Havens, it is an honor to have you here. Monja is uh, in Brazil, as we've said. She has trained in Japan with the great Aoyama Shundo Roshi. I think your teacher actually is Cohen Souza in Brazil. Is that correct, Monja?
No, she was my ordination teacher, but I took Dharma transmission from another teacher, from a Japanese teacher.
I see. And she is also the representative of Soto Shu in Brazil. Is that correct?
Yes, one of them. Uh-huh.
Which
Uh, yeah, so I'm an international missionary, you know. I think there are about 5 of us here in Brazil with
that
that title.
is a very interesting position. I know because I know the Japanese community in Brazil is very old. Some of the people have been there for the first Japanese came to Brazil, I think, over 100 years ago, and I think it must be very traditional. They many of them may want a very traditional form of practice from you, right? From the temple.
Well, that would be in São Paulo, which is where most of the Japanese immigrants are. Here where I am in the very south of Brazil, it's quite a different problem. That we have everybody wants what shall we say? They want an Alan Watts, DT Suzuki, hippie new age kind of Zen.
Well, that's very interesting.
And so it gets pretty complicated.
Well, I'm going to bow out now and let you and turn things over to you, if I may. I know, I believe you're going to begin with the Heart Sutra in Japanese, and then we're just going to start sitting Zazen. For how long did
Yeah,
you want to sit? About a half hour, is that right?
yeah, we can sit about 30 minutes. I've decided to skip Kinhin, okay, and just go right into the talk. But what
That's
I'm thinking of doing is doing the Heart Sutra the way we do it here in our group, because when we recite it in Portuguese, we feel that the energy is not the same. So a lot of times we'll recite it in Japanese and then go directly into the Portuguese version, and we feel that that's sort of tying the two versions together. And so what I was thinking of doing was go reciting in Japanese and then go straight into the Portuguese.
Oh, that would be an
Um,
honor to hear. Thank you so much.
okay.
Without further ado, I'm just going to turn things over to you, and if you need anything, we're all here with you.
Okay, we'll do. So first off, I'll show you our little Zendo. Um, You also see some cat toys rolling around. I thought I got them out of sight, and he found all of them and is having fun. This is our little Zendo. And there you see the cat. And if you look closely, you can see a few balls. Okay. And our altar. And Buddha image. Okay. And then behind me, I have a beautiful Chinese canon, Kanzeon, 1,000 arms canon, and that's sort of it. Okay, so
let us all rise. Should we stand?
Okay.
Right.
Yeah. First we'll have our bows. Makahanya Haramita Shingyo Kanji Sai Bosatsu Gyojin Hanya Haramita Ji Shoken Gon Kaikudo Isai Kuyakushani Shiki Fui Fui Shiki Sokose Sokose Shiki Ju Sogyo Shiki Yakupunyo Se Shari Chi Se Shoho Kuso Fu Sho Fu Metsu Fu Fu Jo Fu So Fu Gen Se Koku Chu Mu Shiki Mu Ju Sogyo Shiki Mu Gen Nibi Se Shin Ni Mu Shiki Shoko Mi Soko Ho Mugen Kai Nai Shi Mu I Shiki Kai Mu Myo Yaku Mu Myo Jin Nai Shi Mu Ro Shi Yaku Mu Ro Shi Jin Mu Kushu Metsu Go Mu Chi Yaku Mu Tokui Mu Sho Toko Budai Satta E Hanya Haramita Koshin Mu Kege Mu Kege Ko Mu Kufu Rei Sai Tendo Mu So Kugyo Ne Han San Se Shobutsu E Hanya Haramita Kotoko Anugutara Sanmyaku Sanbodai Koji Hanya Haramita Seidai Chinchu Seidai Myoshu Seimu Joshu Seimu Todo Shu no Jo Isaiku Shinjutsuku Koko Setsu Hanya Haramita Shu Soku Setsu Shu Watsu Nyate Nyate Hara Nyate Hara So Nyate Boji Soaka Hanya Shingyo quando canção bodhisattva praticava em profunda sabedoria completa, claramente observou o vazio dos cinco agregados, assim se libertando de todas as tristezas e sofrimentos. O Sharishi, forma não é mais que vazio, vazio não é mais que forma, forma é exatamente vazio, vazio é exatamente forma, sensação, conceituação, diferenciação, conhecimento, assim também ou são. O Sharishi, todos os fenômenos são vazio, forma, não nascidos, não mortos, não puros, não impuros, não perdidos, não encontrados, assim é tudo dentro do vazio, sem forma, sem sensação, conceituação, diferenciação, conhecimento, sem olhos, ouvidos, nariz, língua, corpo, mente, sem cor, som, cheiro, sabor, tato, fenômeno, sem mundo de visão, sem mundo de consciência, sem ignorância, sem fim a ignorância, sem velhice e morte, sem fim a velhice e morte, sem sofrimento, sem causa, sem extinção e sem caminho, sem sabedoria e sem ganho, sem nenhum ganho, bodhisattva, devido à sabedoria completa, coração-mente, sem obstáculos, logo sem medo, distante de todas as ilusões, isto é nirvana. Todos os budas dos três mundos, devido à sabedoria completa, obtêm Anuttara Samyaku Sambodhai. Saiba que sabedoria completa é expressão de grande divindade, expressão de grande claridade, expressão insuperável, expressão inigualável, com capacidade de remover todo o sofrimento. Isso é verdade, não é mentira. Assim, invoque e expresse sabedoria completa, invoque e repita: Gyate, Gyate, Hara So, Gyate, Pochi, Soaka, Anya, Shingyo. May this merit extend universally to all, so that together with all beings, we realize the Buddha way. Todos os Budas, a través do espaço e do tempo, todos os bodhisattvas, mahasattvas, Mahaprajna, Okay. Thank you. That was our Brazilian Akahanya.
Well, I will keep time for you then. Shall we just begin sitting?
Yes.
All right. Everyone's prepare to sit.
Okay.
Catfish, I see we have one extra little Buddha with us today. That's lovely. All right.
Ah, okay, yes. Very nice. Very nice. Okay. Sorry about that. It's okay. Ok. Então, let me move these instruments out of the way. So I can have a little more space here. Okay. Good evening to everyone, or good morning, or good afternoon, or whatever time it is, wherever you are. I want to thank Jundo Sensei for inviting me. It's a pleasure to be with you. We're doing our own experiments too with the use of internet for teaching Dharma. We might not always agree about what the experiments we're doing, but the important thing is that we're experimenting and we're trying out new things, and I think that's great. And so I appreciated receiving the invitation. It's a pleasure to be here. I apologize. I've got a very bad cold. I think I'm about in the middle of it. About the third day of. Usually colds last either a week or 7 days. So, and it's around the third day, so I'm close to the middle of the thing. Okay. I wanted to share with you some of my reflections on one of my favorite texts from Master Dogen. And I see that Jundo Sensei posted the text. Did everyone that's on the video manage to read the text? Please signal. Oh, that's wonderful. Hey, you're doing better than my own students. That's great. Okay. Okay. Now, here in my city, it's called Porto Alegre. It's in the very southern part of Brazil. Tibetan Buddhism is really big. There are two large Tibetan Buddhist centers, temples here in the city, and one of them, for the last 3 or 4 years, has been inviting me as visiting guest teacher to seminaries led by Alan Wallace. And Alan Wallace used to be a Tibetan monk and translator for the Dalai Lama. And he's been giving several seminars about Dzogchen, Tibetan practice. And one thing that really called my attention was that in the Tibetan Buddhist traditions, everything is explained to the tiniest detail, and then explained some more. And so it's just, you read texts, for example, that say, for those of higher capacity, you should practice this, and this, and this. But if this is too difficult, if you are a person of medium capacity, don't worry, because you can practice these methods. And then it's a long listing and descriptions and details. And then it comes along, but if even this is too difficult for you, if you have the misfortune to be a person of limited capacities, still don't worry, because now you can do that, that, and that, and that, and that. Okay? And it's just details and details and details. Even so, every once in a while, during the talks or reading the texts, I would just look at it and say, but that's Dogen. But that's Master Dogen. But that's Master Dogen, you know. And what it made me really think about is how concise Master Dogen is in his instructions. When this is compared to the explicit, extensive explanations that we find in Tibetan Buddhism. Because to my mind, the Zen method, the training method of Zen, is extremely, extremely subtle. It's so subtle that it can slip by unnoticed. And I think this is one of the things that creates one of the largest difficulties for us in the process of bringing Zen to the West, because it becomes, then how do we distinguish what is a cultural thing that can be dispensed with and what is something that is actually part of the Zen method? Because, for example, samu, you know, very often translated as work practice. I find that many Brazilians just sort of look at it and say, well, I know how to sweep the floors in my house. I sweep the floors in my house, so why do I have to do work practice? Okay, well, here in Brazil, yes, we deal with a country that was a slave culture for many, many, many years, and also a Catholic country where labor is sort of, you know, is God's punishment for Adam and Eve having eaten of the apple of the knowledge of good and bad. And there are a whole bunch of factors that make Brazilians resist manual labor in general, different from the United States, which was just sort of built on the Protestant work ethic. Okay. And so it's been being a challenge for me to try to explain to students what the difference is of doing samu in a temple with a teacher, with senpais, and sweeping the floor at home. Okay. Now, so let's look quickly at this text. Okay. In the Nishijime edition, it's chapter 45 of the Shobo Genzo, Bodhisattva Shishobo, 4 elements of a bodhisattva's social relations. Okay, it starts out, free giving means not being greedy. That's an interesting way of putting it. Okay. Free giving, he's basing himself on fusei, or dana, and it means not being greedy. When we really stop and look at ourselves, really, really honestly, 99.9% of the time, whenever we do something, whenever we give somebody something, we're looking for some sort of response. It could only be just thank you, or just a smile, we prefer to be loved, you know, and so it's extremely difficult for us to simply give something with no strings whatsoever attached. But when he says not greedy, it's exactly that. How do we cut off all the strings in our giving? For us as monks or nuns, our practice is to give the teachings freely, without worrying about what's coming back to us. That's how the entire Buddhist Sangha was structured. And to my mind, that's the best quality control possible. You know, because we can be sure that people don't make donations to a monk just because they like the color of his eyes. You know, oh, that blue-eyed monk. Oh, how wonderful! I like the color of his eyes, so I'll donate. No. They generally like because they respect the person's practice, or because they like the person's teachings. Okay. But for example, when I was in the monastery, my final year, I managed to scrape by with enough survival level Japanese that they finally started sending me to the what's called Tsukigyo, which is the monthly visit to a member's house where we'd sit in front of the family altar and recite sutras for the family. And then, you know, then maybe you would chat with the family a little bit. Of course, I wasn't able to chat very much, but the families would have a chance to spend a little bit of time with the monks, and they would always give us an envelope. And we would never look at the envelope. We just, you know, we just receive it, you know, with a gesture of gratitude, you know, tuck it away, and go back to the temple and hand it over. So literally, the practice was to simply be offering the sutras, offering the teachings, with no concern for what came back. In her book, I think the English title is for a beautiful person, something like that. Aoyama Roshi mentions one time when she went out on the alms round, you know, takohatsu, mendicancy, and somebody threw water on her, you know, just a bucket of water, you know. And what's the response? You simply recite the verse, you know, the receiving a donation verse, and continue. So without concern for what actually comes back. So I think that's why he says the free giving means not being greedy, because it's our greed, it's our wanting something back, no matter how subtle it is, that messes up our giving, that contaminates it. And of course, then he goes on and reinforces this. Not being greedy means not coveting. Not coveting means, in everyday language, not courting favor. So again, here he is repeating the same thing, where we're not looking for any kind of gain in our giving. And this makes me think of 3 words that Master Dogen uses constantly: fame and profit. Okay? 3 simple words that we should not practice looking for fame and profit. That is so subtle, there's so much depth in those 3 words that most of us simply don't see it. Because generally you can look at it and say, oh, fame. I'm not looking to be famous. I'm not interested in being famous, so I'm okay there. Oh, profit? I'm not interested in making money, so that's okay too. So I'm fine. So my practice is okay. That ain't how it works. Not that way. Not that way. Fame and profit. Fame, any kind of recognition is fame. Even if it's just a smile. Even if it's just, oh, that was nice. Recognition, profit, any kind of gain, even just receiving a smile, because, what happens usually when somebody smiles at you? Don't you feel a lifting? Oh, that feels good. Okay, that's profit. That's gain. You received something. And so again, fame and profit. We have to learn to, when we read Master Dogen, to take these simple words and really start analyzing what else could that be saying? What could the true meaning be behind that one word? I think this fame and profit in the Tibetan tradition would be described in something like 5 pages. Okay? But we've got it in 3 words. So it's our challenge to really delve into it, get into it, and really go behind those simple words, and looking deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper to see what is he really saying and what does it mean to my practice. Okay? So, now, I'm just jumping around to some of the phrases that I highlighted. Okay, he also says, and a gift is not to be hated for its small value, but its effects should be real. Okay, a gift should not be hated for its small value. That's true. When I arrived here in Porto Alegre, I remember some of the first sessions that I led, and it was out in the country, and so the Zendo was in one part of the land, and the area where I had my Doksan room, interview room, was in another part, and so the students would have to leave the Zendo and walk to this other building, and I remember. It was really nice. One of the students, when he would come, he would always stop on the way and pick up some little flower, just a wildflower. And he would always come in to the Doksan room with that little flower and hand me the flower. That was perfect. This was a student who was understanding this whole concept of never arriving empty-handed. There was always a gesture of giving without being concerned that it's big or small, but considering the effect, the meaning, what it meant. And for me, really, it meant he thought about it. He was thinking about it, all coming over. And so it was the importance of the gesture, to the point that still now, 7 years later, I still remember that. It's a very fresh memory in my mind. And so we don't have to worry so much about the size of what we're going to give, but just the meaning behind what we might be giving. Okay? Okay. And then further on he says, the reason is that in becoming giver and receiver, the subject and object of giving are connected. And that's true. So we should freely give even a single word or a single verse of Dharma. We should freely give even a single penny or a single grass stalk of alms. Such givers covet no reward, but just share according to their ability. You see, we don't have to worry about having a lot of money to be able to give, to be able to be generous. We can be generous. It's a smile. You know, if you take city buses, for example, you know, when you get on the bus, smile and say hi to the driver. You know, when you're in the bank, you know, okay, after 20 minutes you finally get to the cashier, but smile and say good afternoon. You know, these small gestures can make a big difference in the day for the other person. But so often we end up so wrapped up in our own little world that we forget about this stuff. We forget about these tiny gestures that can make so much difference. You know? Okay, now, then he says something very interesting here. Earning a living and doing productive work are originally nothing other than free giving. Oh, how about thinking of your job as dana, as giving to the world? I get I had a big cultural shock when I got back to the West after my time in Japan, because the Japanese culture values consideration for the other person very, very highly. And so in your stores, you generally really have the salespeople really working hard to make you feel welcome and to attend to your every need. You know, your big department stores will have employees just to stand at the door and just to bow at you and say "Irashaimase." And then I get back to the West, and especially when I got back to Porto Alegre, all of a sudden I would go to the corner shop, you know, green goods shop, and here the lady is. She's, you know, I've picked up some bananas and a loaf of bread, and I'm at the cashier, and she's on the phone, and you know, she's turned to the side. She takes my money, she counts out the change, and puts the change back for me, and hasn't stopped talking once on the phone. In other words, she's just ignored me completely. Boy, that was real culture shock for me. And it's a very Western attitude. I work to gain a salary. I work to earn money. I don't work to serve others. I don't work to express myself. I don't work for my own personal fulfillment. I work to earn a salary. And the more we can free ourselves of those kind of thoughts and look at it as, I have something to give to the world, and I can give it through my work. And by my giving through my work, society, through the company that employs me, can give me something in return. But my main concern is to be giving to society and let the return happen. Of course, we can't be idiots about it. We have to note some companies, you know, we've got some bosses that really will try to take you for you know, will really try to avoid paying you anything worth anything. But usually the biggest difficulty we have in our jobs is that we aren't willing to give that little bit more, that little bit of additional generosity, and that can make a big difference. Okay, now So I find it very interesting that he puts also earning a living and doing productive work in the category of free giving. Okay, when we can give up even one speck of dust for free giving, though it is our own act, we will quietly rejoice in it, because we will have already received the authentic transmission of one of the virtues of the Buddhas, and because, for the first time, we will be practicing one of the methods of a bodhisattva. That's true. When we are able to truly give with no strings attached, then we are discovering one of the essences of our practice. Now, we have to be careful about something called spiritual bypassing. And with spiritual bypassing, sometimes you can have a person who has learned to be super generous, just denying him or herself the stereotype as a woman, just constantly denying herself and always giving. But there's a big catch. When it's codependence, there is a big string attached, because when the person is in codependence, the person is doing all of this trying to be accepted, trying to be loved. It was the way the person learned to feel accepted. So that is not the proper giving in Buddhism. That's not the proper giving that Master Dogen is talking about. And so it's very important that we don't confuse the free giving with codependent giving. If anybody needs to, then please research codependence and research spiritual bypass. Finally, here is one sentence that's so easy to skip over. What is hard to change is the mind of living beings. How true. And we're always trying to change the other person. We don't want to be changed ourselves, but we want to change the others. Okay. And then the second element that he talks about is kind speech, or aigo in Japanese, which means palabras, loving words. Okay, kind speech means when meeting living beings, first of all, to feel compassion for them and to offer caring and loving words. One of our biggest difficulties can be depending on where we grow up or factors in our life. Some of us can sort of have our wires crossed, okay? And so somehow our messages never seem to get received the way they were meant to be received. So sometimes we think we're saying kind words, whereas the other person is thinking we're being aggressive or nasty or offensive or whatever. I grew up in a part of the United States where, sort of East Coast, in southeastern Ohio. It was close enough to the New York area, and sort of an area where it can all be sort of famous for the rough speech, and nothing kind about it. And so the words, the tone of voice, and the facial expressions could really be strong and hard. And so here in Brazil, I arrived in Brazil in 1971, and every so often, uh, I would find myself involved in a situation where the other person was asking me, "Why are you so angry?" And I would, "What? I'm not angry." And I'd say, "Yes, you are." And I'd say, "No, I'm not." And I'd say, "Yes, you are." "No, I'm not." 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 Okay, you know, so I finally got angry. Uh, uh, and this would be very upsetting to me because I couldn't understand I'm being attacked by a cat. Okay, 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 okay. Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. Oh, yeah, 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 yeah. Cat break, cat break. Mm, 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 mm. Okay, okay. No, what? Okay, sorry about that. Oh, he's still not happy. Mm, water treatment. Okay, anyway. Um, and I could never understand what, what, Kitty. Sorry about that. Hey, Kitty, Kitty, enough, enough, enough. I love you too, okay? Hmm? Okay? You mind? Anyway, let's try, let's try to continue. And I just couldn't figure out why this scene would happen with different people, you know, but just periodically I would find myself in this kind of situation until when I was getting ready to go to Japan for a monastery. I read I was reading a book about Japanese culture for Americans going to Japan, how to cope with Japanese culture kind of thing. And then there was just one sentence that all of a sudden just jumped out and danced in front of my eyes and rang sirens and red lights blinking on and off. And I just broke down crying because I finally understood what the problem had been. Because that sentence said, when you are in Japan, if you are thinking deeply or if you are confused, do not frown, because your bringing your brows together will be interpreted as anger. Ha! Okay. Because really, I grew up in a part of the country where thinking or feeling confused was but other people interpret that as anger. So what did I learn from that? Well, okay, from that I learned when I feel confused or whatever, then I'll try to do any kind of expression other than so I just try to do anything but frown. And what's the biggest message in all of this? My success at communication doesn't depend just on what's in my heart, but it depends on what the other is actually able to understand. Obviously, there are limits. Sometimes I can be having very clear communication, and the other simply isn't being able to hear. But if I have 2, 3, 4 repetitive situations where people are complaining about my communication, then I have to think, well, maybe I need to add new styles of communication to my repertoire. Okay? Because I won't say that one single style of communication is wrong. No, I think they're all necessary. but sometimes we do need to learn new styles. I still struggle with it. Sometimes I listen to recordings of my own Dharma talks, and I just think, oh, that's an awful tone of voice. Because I hear myself more as a Brazilian would be hearing me, and geez, that I can sound bossy and authoritarian, sound like a general, and I am an intense personality, but yeah. So one of my major efforts nowadays is really to find ways of having other ways of expressing myself and clarifying and helping the others. For example, helping my students to understand that they don't have to take my tone of voice so personally, you know, and at the same time looking for example, emails. Sometimes I literally struggle over emails because I'll read and reread and reread and reread, you know, editing and trying to smooth and soften, and even then sometimes not all that successful, but it's been a good exercise for me, you know. One of the reasons I went to Japan was I hoped to absorb a little bit of the Japanese, of the delicacy. For example, Aoyama Roshi is, wow, she's absolutely incredible. I'd hoped that a little bit of that could rub off on me. Unfortunately, not much of it did, but, well, I tried. Okay, anyway, so in Buddhism there are words: take care of yourself, take good care of yourself, and there's a disciple's greeting: how are you? Speaking with a feeling of compassion for living beings as if they were babies is kind speech. Basically, whenever we're talking with people, or even when we're having a discussion, even an argument, if we can remember to turn on the compassion in our hearts, you know, perhaps being a little less concerned about being rational and logical and whatever, but turn on the compassion. And how do I become Buddha nature, communicating with Buddha nature? You know, very often things get smoother. Remember, kind speech arises from a loving mind, and the seed of a loving mind is compassion. We should learn that kind speech has the power to turn around the heavens. Oh, yes. Okay, then, helpful conduct means utilizing skillful means to benefit living beings by looking into the distant and near future and employing expedient methods to benefit them. Helpful conduct is the whole Dharma. It universally benefits self and others. Okay. So here we're talking. He talks about, you know, he gives examples of where one helped the turtle, another helped the sparrows. We have the king who, if he was fixing his hair, you know, binding up his hair, and would be interrupted, he would just stop and go answer whoever was there, being the helpful conduct. Okay, and then finally we have cooperation, means not being contrary. Again, that's interesting. Again, he expresses it about what it isn't, what it is not. Okay. Cooperation means not being contrary. It is not being contrary to oneself and not being contrary to others. Notice that he's saying it's in relation to oneself as well as to the other. You know, a lot of our Western culture has become a culture of opposition, and it's sort of like, you know, we have to have an opinion. And if somebody else states something, then I have to have a contrary opinion, and then we have to debate it and argue about it. And we start losing our capacity for cooperating and seeing what is our common goal. So perhaps this not being contrary, you know, we can start looking at the various ways in which we are just plain contrary. We're always in the opposition. You know, we have a better opinion. We have a better idea. You know, defending our own opinion. In our individualistic culture, it's okay. We have to be able to do that in our jobs, but perhaps we can develop the flexibility of having other options of behavior, so that it's no longer a knee-jerk reflex of just automatically going into opposition mode. Okay. Okay. When we know cooperation, self and others are oneness. Yeah. That's when we express the unity of all beings. The sea does not refuse water, therefore it is able to realize its greatness. Mountains do not refuse earth, therefore they are able to realize their height. Okay? And then he says, when he talks about emperors do not hate the people. They do not hate the people. But this does not mean there is no reward and punishment. Even if there is reward and punishment, there is no hatred for the people. Again, he is clarifying that just because we empathize with the other, that does not necessarily mean that reward and punishment are not applicable or necessary. If you look at the images of the Thousand Arms Canon, or Thousand Armed Canción, the 11 heads, the next to last head, you know, they're sort of in a pyramid. The next to last head before the Buddha head is let me figure this out in English. It's an irate face. Yeah, it's a very fierce, angry face. And the thing is, true compassion needs to have the capacity of making a show of anger and ferocity, but maintaining compassion in the heart. Because sometimes it's only that fierceness that the other person can respond to, can understand. But it has to be compassion in the heart, not with anger in the heart. If there's anger in the heart, we're lost in the three poisons. Okay? But with compassion in the heart, sometimes, yes, we discover that we have to show teeth and we have to show claws and you know, just that I'm going to kill you kind of expression. Okay, so okay, basically that's what I wanted to wanted to share with you. So now let's open it up for questions and answers.
Isshin, I want to say, even though you have no demand for it, thank you, and here's a smile.
Thank you. And I will happily accept the smile.
Thank you for the beautiful reminder that in this beautiful world, this beautiful Buddhist world, there's room for all of us, and we just need to treat each other with with respect and honor the place for all. This is a boundless world, and what your talk touched my heart. But let me ask some of our members that we have folks sitting at home, and because of the time we picked, unfortunately, this was my doing. It was not fair to the Europeans, so a lot of the people in Europe are going to join us later. Most of the people here are North American crowd from Mexico to Canada. So who has a question? Please raise your hand. William, let me turn your mic on. 1 second. Go ahead. Can't hear you, William.
Okay. Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay. I liked what you talked about earlier about the fame and profit, and how this idea of fame could be something as little as wanting someone to say thank you or to smile at you. It seems to me that when that is a motivation, that you're still having maybe a clinging to the self or an ego issue. And I was wondering if that's the case, if there are perhaps some giving exercises that can help you to get over your clinging to the self or ego issue.
Just giving. And I would say start small. Start with simple things. And even just at the level of smiling at the bus driver, saying good day to the doorman, just small gestures, and then observe within yourself the various kinds of feelings that you might have when you make these gestures. Because even if there's just a, wasn't I nice? Then okay, yeah, you were looking for something and you gave it to yourself, and especially when we give somebody a present, how often then we're upset if we find out the person gave the present away to somebody else, or even threw it away, because yes, so much of our giving has strings attached, and we can only train non-strings attached by training giving. But start simple, because if you start trying to already give away things that hurts, you go out and give away $100, but geez, I got to pay the light bill. That's a little hard. So don't try to make impossible demands on yourself. But literally, the only way to learn to give is by giving.
Thank you.
Does that make sense?
Yes, Sensei. Thank you very much.
Good luck.
Who else is with us? Raise your hand. Kyonin, 1 second. Let me get your mic on. There you go. Go ahead, Kyonin. Kyonin's from Mexico.
Hello from Mexico, Isshin.
Yeah.
Oh, my connection is a little bit slow, so I'll try to talk a little bit slower so there's no lag.
Okay, thank you.
Brazilian and Mexican societies are pretty much alike in the sense that we are societies that lost the war to our conquerors. So I find it very hard to explain to people how Zen Buddhism works in contrast to Catholicism. People don't seem to understand that we just let things go away, or that we work hard out of compassion and give out of compassion. So my question is, how do you explain to people who is not very open to Zen in Brazil? How is it difficult for you to try to open people's minds?
Well, in Brazil, actually, in one sense, we have a rather fortunate situation, because the word Zen became a very popular word, to the point at which São Paulo is a major metropolis. You know, I think Mexico City and São Paulo are very similar sized cities. Some years ago, somebody published a Zen guide to São Paulo, and you know, a book like this thick, and it listed Zen spa, Zen restaurant, Zen bar, Zen bookstore, Zen I don't know what, Zen this and that and the other thing, and not a single Zen center or Zen temple. And Brazilian people associate the word Zen with, I'll say this in Portuguese and then I'll translate it. But the best way of demonstrating it would be, estou Zen, estou Zen. You know, it's just, I'm so Zen. I'm so Zen. And so and so they end up imagining that Zen people are always just sort of floating, you know, very new agey. And then they get very upset with me when I come on with a very strong personality. And I'm correcting, and no, that's not the way it is. Because I'm not being properly Zen. Yes, there are difficulties. I find the biggest difficulty when I'm trying to teach the precepts, because I find it seems to be almost next to impossible to convince people that our precepts are not 10 commandments. And to the point which, for example, I had one student, she actually completed sewing her rakusu and was to get ready to have the transmission ceremony, when all of a sudden she backed out, she stopped practice, and she just said, I cannot receive the precepts because I can't turn myself into a saint. And I just sort of, geez, after even a year of precepts course, she still hasn't understood the difference between the 10 commandments and the Buddhist precepts. What are the points that you find the most difficulty with?
It's on, Joey.
Oh, especially trying to explain them that Zen, the word Zen is very popular here as well, because we even have tea or shampoo with the Zen word in so people seem to relate Zen to New Age or to transcendent peace. But the problem is how do you make them understand, for example, that we don't have a heaven or hell, or that there is we don't rely on gods or deities of some kind. I think that's the most difficult part for Mexicans to understand.
Okay. Maybe my group is non-typical. I haven't experienced that specifically, that kind of difficulty, except for the confusion of the precepts with having to become a saint and learning to follow the precepts. to the T, you know, to the absolute last word. I'll have to think about that. And if I come up with some ideas, I'll pass them on to Jundo Sensei, and he can pass them on to you. Okay?
Muito obrigado.
Hi.
Right. Someone, raise your hand. You don't get to talk to Monja Isshin every day. Yes, Clark. Let me turn you on here. Wait a second. Wait a second. Well, where are you there, Clark? That's me. Wait. Oh, I can't get your microphone on for some reason. Let me try. Oh, there. Well, Clark, I'm afraid I can't get your microphone to unmute. All right. Just give us a wave. Maybe I'll try it a bit. Anyone else for now? Okay, Michael. There you go.
First off, thank you. This was a wonderful talk. And I think the thing that resonated with me was in the beginning where you're talking about the gift and the importance of the where the gift originated from. Right now, one of the most influential people in my life is my granny, who's not doing well. She's getting kind of old. And I remember when I was younger, my brother and I always used to kind of fight back and forth that his presents were bigger than mine, and I always wanted the big present. And she always taught us that it is not the gift, but the thought that counts. So thank you for that wonderful reminder, because sometimes I know for myself I do forget that. So thank you.
We all forget that. Yeah. Thank you for sharing that.
All right. One more. Jojo, 1 second. Oh, you too. I can't get your mic on. Would you try on your end? Unmute your mic. There you go.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. I have more of a comment than a question. I have also, with what you said in the beginning about the gift and not expecting anything in return, I have 2 young children, and I also work with children in school. So it has been quite a practice for me, and I have to say I still have to practice every day, because when you give and you give and you give and you get up early with the kids and you give and you give and you give all day, you want something back. And then you're told that mommy's mean and mommy's this and mommy's that and I can't stand mommy and and it's a good reminder that, you know, why am I doing that? Because I don't get many gifts back from my kids.
Yes, it is quite a challenge. It is quite a challenge. I think being a mother and being a teacher dealing with children all day is, I would say the monastery life is not all that different, because in the monastery also, you know, we're being pushed and pushed and pushed and pushed. You'll usually find somebody who's going through Zen training, monastic training, at some point is feeling like a slave, feeling abused, until finally we discover that point inside us, deep inside us, from which everything flows. And once we reach that point, we are able to give and give, and we're naturally replenished. Just the satisfaction of that little smile. Yeah, because children do smile back at us. You know, they come after us with, I want this, I want that, I want the other thing. But then when they get something, they're just so happy. It's such a charming smile. You know, nothing is comparable to the smile of a baby. But sometimes if we aren't feeling nourished within ourselves, then our neediness means that we can't catch the value of that little smile. Now, it's very important. It's very important to have your support group, either friends or a practice group or some community group where you're with peers, with people of your age, with similar interests, where you also receive emotional and spiritual support. Because no one is an island. And very often in today's world, we end up taking care of children and teaching and trying to be an island. I know for me, there are very few Dharma teachers in Brazil. So the closest person I have who has a similar level of training is like 1,000 kilometers away. And so I had quite a spell where even though I had full support from our superintendent, I forget how many kilometers São Paulo is from Porto Alegre, but it's 1,000 plus. Even though I had total support from him, I still felt very, very, very isolated, and I felt very much like a single mother trying to raise a group of children. What has helped me is that I'm now in 2 interreligious dialogue groups, and so even though our religions are different, our social positions are similar. So I'm with peers. And another thing that has helped me a lot is I've taken up a course of training in humanistic psychoanalysis, which is is close enough to the mundane, to the secular level of Zen, that there's a lot of affinity, and I feel a lot of affinity and support from the other people in that course, and so these are ways that I've been trying to help compensate, because we are human beings and we are not islands. Does that help?
Yes, it helps very much. Thank you.
Yes. Good luck.
Thank you.
Good luck.
If I may ask a quick question to follow on that, I know that maybe many Buddhist priests, especially in Japan, are trained to run a parish temple and maybe to perform rituals for their parishioners, but not necessarily as in the West, so much as a minister to cater to people when they come with their divorce, with their alcohol problem, with their psychological problem. How do you find the transition and role, and how did you handle it?
Well, fortunately, I had a lot of other trainings before I became a nun, and so this wasn't such a big problem for me personally, although it sort of surprised me. So for me, the last 7 years since I came to Porto Alegre and started working with leading my own group, has been a period of learning to trust my intuition. I don't even like to call it my intuition because I can't really say where it comes from. But I'm learning to trust it and go with it. But at the same time, it's also made me very aware of the need for my own disciples to get training that would make them qualified to do this counseling. And so one of the reasons I took up this course in humanistic psychoanalysis was also to check it out, to send my students to. Because, okay, you know, if we were Lutherans or if we were Catholics, we would be having counseling. We would be having classes about counseling in our seminary training. But in the Zen monastery, we don't get that, because that's not one of the typical roles of the Japanese Zen priest. But it definitely becomes one of the roles that we have here in the West. And I think it's insane for a person to try to do counseling with no additional training. As I said, before I came to Zen, I already had several different types of trainings, besides many books that I'd read, and many people already thought I was a psychologist. And so, like I said, for me, it actually hasn't been a problem, but I consider it a very serious issue.
Thank you, Monja. We're coming to our closing few minutes here. I want to get one or two more people in. Anyone, just raise your hand. Okay, Yugen, let me get you on there. No, Yugen, you're going to have to turn your microphone on your side too. Don't know why that is. There you go.
Teacher, thank you for your time and your talk. I would like to ask you, and I'll, in advance, my question is a loaded one, but I want to ask you for your perspective on the difference between the commandments and the precepts, and I will share with you the reason for my question afterwards.
Okay, usually the way some of these things I don't quite remember how to say in English. The Judeo-Christian tradition, the way it's presented popularly nowadays, you have people interpreting the commandments as either you follow these commandments or you go to hell, and you go to hell eternally. And that's one aspect. Second aspect, the commandments were handed down from a superior being to the mere mortals. Okay? Also, Christianity is so, as it's being presented popularly, again, all the emphasis seems to be on original sin and not on original purity. And so those are aspects that I see that come up with the Ten Commandments. And then when we get to the precepts, one, we aren't talking about you're going to hell if you don't follow these. It's a situation of, we recommend that you orient your life according to these precepts, because if you don't, you will, doing or not doing, you will live the karmic consequences, be they positive or be they negative. And so it's simply a call for conscious living. Second, they are not from a superior being to the rest of us, mere mortals. Okay? I had an idea that went zooming by. Let's see if I can get it back. And Buddhism especially Mahayana Buddhism, is based on the concept of Buddha nature, which is quite the opposite of original sin. You know, Buddha nature. I found it fascinating when I watched that movie about Saint Francis. What's the name? Father, Son, Sister, Moon, something like that. The closing phrase was one of the cardinals saying, "I think we talk too much about original sin and we've forgotten original purity."
Right.
And so for me, when we talk about Buddha nature, we're talking about our positive potential. So even though we get tangled up in our ignorance, we get tangled up in our selfishness and our greediness and our aversions, it's my personal belief that we are all looking for the light. And for me, that's Buddha nature trying to express itself.
Right.
So that's sort of what I would say.
Thank you. May I, if I may, I'll share with you the reason for my asking the question.
Yes.
My religion of birth, of family, is Greek Orthodoxy, which is full of rules and can be very dark.
Ooh.
But I have learned more about the tradition of my birth as a Zen Buddhist. And in some of the readings of the early Christian monastics, the Desert Fathers, and the Franciscan monks today, they draw parallels between our Buddha nature, our original face, and the presence of the Holy Spirit.
Yes.
So, in that perspective, the commandments are not absolutes. They're things practiced like the precepts.
Yes.
And in the notion of individual practice in Zen and in early Christianity, it is an individual struggle as imperfect beings. In Islam, they have the word jihad, which originally meant the notion of individual practice.
Oh.
And the early writings of Christianity have the same thing.
Uh-huh.
I ask this because, as Kyonan said in Mexico, we have many Americans who ask about Zen from their perspective as Christians, and they try to understand the concepts of Zen through their understanding of Christianity.
Yeah.
That was the reason for my question.
Yes. And you've brought up a very good point. I was raised in a very, very, very fundamentalist Protestant church in southeastern Ohio, and I just couldn't take it. It was just all the talk about everybody else was going to hell. The Methodists were going to hell, the Catholics were going to hell, and you don't even talk about the Buddhists and the Hindus, and just all that, they're just talking so much about sin and so little talk about love. I really just couldn't take it, and when I was 16, I stopped going. In reality, I then met the Anglican priest, and of the little town that I grew up in, and so I wanted to start going to the Anglican church, and just all hell broke loose at home. At which point I just, okay, that's it. I'm through with any version of Christianity. And that's when I became a spiritual seeker. Now, what I found very interesting was when I got to Zen. Okay, obviously, first was the feeling of I'd finally reached home. Okay, in fact, many times the first 3 months, I would go to the temple, and I would sit in zazen, and just the tears would just stream down my face I would just be crying from the feeling of finally being home after so long of going around and searching. And then I started having different interpretations of bits of the Bible. And then one day, all of a sudden, it dawned on me, hey, I'm finally becoming the Christian I always wanted to be, now that I'm a Zen Buddhist. I agree with you. The parallels are absolutely incredible. But we have to get past. That's why, if you noticed, I always qualified what I was saying with what is being presented popularly, because I don't feel that this that's being presented popularly is the true Christianity. One of the books that I've enjoyed most was The Rules of Saint Benedict, and when we see the rules of how a trainee should be received at the monastery, okay, yeah, same thing as Zen, you know. First, just tell him to go away, keep telling him to go away, go away, go away. Nobody wants you here. Then when you finally let him in, and then just tell, oh, you stupid idiot, you know, what are you doing? What do you think you're doing here? Nobody needs you here, you know. Just go testing and testing and testing, you know. It's just okay. I've seen that before. It's just so similar. So in many ways, I think spiritual training is going to be very similar no matter what the religion we're talking about. Obviously, with Buddhism, we want to feel that there is an extra of liberation from samsara, liberation from the wheel of rebirth and whatever. But then we get into metaphysics that nobody can really prove for or against, any more than anybody can prove there being a heaven or a hell controlled by a creator God. And so I really appreciate being in the interreligious dialogue groups, precisely because of being together with these peers. Okay? Thank you for sharing that. That was beautiful.
On that lovely note, very hopeful, I'm going to let Monja Isshin get back to her sickbed unless someone has a really pressing something.
One more question.
One more?
Or
Clark,
comment.
Can you turn your microphone on from your side?
Ah,
yeah,
good.
Okay.
Yeah, good. Okay, your question, Clark.
Hi, I'll make it brief. I was wondering if you could comment a little bit on the question of Dana in terms of the difference between giving to somebody and enabling them. I struggle a little bit sometimes with charitable acts in terms of knowing how to give properly without somehow encouraging
Without encouraging what? There was
continued negative behavior on the recipient.
See. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a very important question. And we have the saying of you give a person a fish, you feed him for one meal. If you teach him to, if you give him a fishing pole and teach him to fish, you know, you're giving a certain number of meals. But if you teach him how to make a fishing pole and how to fish, then you give him independence. Some people really get confused when they discover that that many Zen groups don't make social action the big priority. when our group started, our group was very new, very immature, and very small group. And we started in 2007. And at the end of the first year, one of the members at that time, all of a sudden, said, well, I think we should start making plans for doing hospital work and prison work next year. And I just, we aren't ready. We had sort of a discussion about it. And in the end, that person left the group because I didn't accept her idea. Well, there were other reasons for her leaving, but that was a big factor. Then we have Saikawa Roshi's, the instructions he gave when he gave ordination, or actually reordination, to a monk, a European monk, who had received ordination in the Deshimaru lineage. Okay, and he was very clear and said, you must first practice for your own realization. And when you have achieved some realization, then you must dedicate yourself 24 hours a day to serving the community. Now, why is that in Zen? That's because we can have wise compassion. In other words, the compassion that comes from wisdom, okay? Wisdom and compassion together. Or we can have stupid compassion. Stupid compassion, we become part of the problem. We help the problem continue to exist. We create dependency. We enable the person to continue having trouble. It's like we go out and give fish to everybody, but we don't teach anybody how to make a fishing pole. And so really, I think we have to have clarity about what are our motivations. How much of our wanting to help other people comes from a wanting to be a hero, wanting to be looked up to, wanting to be a good guy, really get into what are our motivations and what's behind what we're doing. And yes, are we enabling or are we giving independence to the person? Are we helping as equals, human being to human being, or are we acting as a superior who is saving an inferior being? Does that make sense?
Yes, thank you.
Okay.
Thank you again, Monja. I wanted to say, I think I'm going to paraphrase the old saying. When we all caught cold, you sneezed. Is it
beautiful?
Anything you'd like to say, or recite, or cough to take us home this evening? You can take us home with another cough. It's fine.
Okay, then Jundo, I would like to ask you to close up the Zazenkai with your usual closing. Okay.
Well, Kyonin in Mexico, who is our Ino, would you be willing to recite the verse of atonement and the 4 vows?
Sure, I don't have my bell ready, but I will gladly.
All right, everyone rise, please.
Just give me a second. harmful words, thoughts, and acts ever committed by me since of old, on account of beginningless greed, anger, and ignorance, born of my body, mouth, and mind. Now I atone for them all. To save all sentient beings, though beings numberless, to transform all delusions, though delusions inexhaustible, to perceive reality, though reality is boundless, to attain the enlightened way, a way unattainable, to save all sentient beings, though beings numberless, to transform all delusions, though delusions inexhaustible, to perceive reality, though reality is boundless, to attain the enlightened way, a way unattainable, to save all sentient beings, though beings numberless, to transform all delusions, though delusions inexhaustible, to perceive reality, though reality is boundless, to attain the enlightened way, a way unattainable.
All right. I will thank
Wonderful.
everyone again, and I will say good night. And